Welcome back to part 2 of the Skyship video, where I finish construction on my awesome Skyship. So let's dive in. I added a strut to the back of the ship for stability, because when it landed it had a tendency to tip over. I found this cool clear dome that I decided to use as a bridge or a navigation station. Here the crew is assembled and ready and waiting. They can't wait to take off on new adventures in their new airship. I cut all the pieces for the navigation dome and put those together. Gave it one more good test fit. Mushroom Boy is here helping me out with that. And so far so good. Whoosh, wee. This little piece right here was originally a window that I had cut for some other projects, but it made a nice door for the ship, so I decided to use it for that. Next, I gave it an overall coat of primer gray, getting it ready for the next painting process. Here, Captain Tolius is giving it a little test ride, making sure the dome fits properly in the navigation station. And not too bad. Throw in a couple of swooshes just for effect. See how it might look flying through the ether. As you can see by the tumbling and turning, the ship has its own internal gravity, keeps everybody in place. I had this 3D printed dragon head from another project that I thought might be fun to put on the front of the ship. Arr. Once I had put the trim on the outside of the ship, I had a few big cracks that I needed to fill. So I filled it with paper mache, and I use one of my handy dandy palette knives to push the paper mache into the cracks. And if you don't have a set of palette knives, I highly recommend getting some. I found them to be very useful. They do a lot. You can mix paint, you can push in paper mache, you can use them to scrape things and take apart things that you glue together and then wanted to take apart again. They're really handy for sliding in. I keep a little bit of the paper mache in a small makeup jar. Here you can see me squirting it with a little bit of water from a spray bottle to keep it wet when I'm not using it. At the end, I had done kind of a little bit of a messy job, so I just used a moist tissue paper to get all the excess off and clean it up a little bit. When I was trying to decide on the colors that I wanted to use, I just flipped it over and did a few test swatches on the bottom of it. I ultimately decided on a darker yellow with kind of a mahogany for the trim. After putting the gray base coat on, I did a wash with a kind of a dark brown, which settled into the crevices nicely and gave it that kind of a grimy undercoat, which I actually did want for this particular build. I used my painter's paint template technique to make an outline of the floor that I was going to use to make the planking. I recommend running the tape like fish scales, run them in one direction, and then peel it up from the first piece of tape that you put down, and that way it all comes up at once. And once I had the shape of the tape cut out, I just simply pasted that down to a piece of paper and cut that out, and then I have a nice sturdy template that I could use again if I needed to. Although for this one I only needed it once. From there was on to making the deck railings, which is a similar process. I make a template, and then I cut that template out, and then I transfer it onto my illustration board and cut that out. Because I wasn't going to light this build, I had to do the windows a little bit differently. So rather than making them something that you could see through, I decided to just cut the window openings out and then insert a little piece of a mirror to give it the illusion of being a window. Hopefully it worked out okay. Yeah. And what I discovered on this project is there's kind of a 20-80 rule. You can do 80% of the work in the first 20% of the time, and you do the last 20% of the work in the last 80% of the time. Seems like all the details take the most time at the very end. And for me, this was kind of what I went through. I put a hatch at the top to gain access to the top of the uppermost deck, and as an escape hatch. At some point in the future, I'll probably do the sails for this airship, but right now, it's magic!